Hey, what's going on, everybody? JB the Ranch Mechanic here, and today is going to be part 3 of the Silverado Repair project. Part 2 will be linked up here in the card. In the last segment, my son Everett and I managed to get the new rough country steel bumper mounted and installed and leveled up and everything on the truck. But today we're going to be finishing that process off by getting the lights wired in and aimed correctly. I think what I'm going to try to do is take some of the pieces of the factory harness laying in the old bumper over here for the fog lights. I might cut one of those connectors off, which is something I don't like doing, but I don't want to buy a GM 12-pin connector for only 3 wires. I could probably go about just cutting the plug off of the truck and wiring it in that way, but I really don't want to do that. Since we're not going to be using the old factory bumper anymore, I'd much rather cannibalize the plug off of that and turn that into my new pigtail for the relays that come with the wiring harness on all of these rough country lights. I'll go into detail on all of that here in a little bit, but basically what I'm going to plan on doing is wiring the 4 cube lights that come with this bumper to the existing factory fog light switch, and then I'm going to have the center light bar that mounts in the bumper. That's going to be on a 3-way switch, so we're going to be able to either turn it on manually by ourselves, have it off all the time, or have it come on automatically when we turn the high beams on. So that's going to be a pretty cool thing. Not my original idea. I first heard about this and saw it thanks to Cliff over at the Sunday Drive. If you're not familiar with their channel, I would go check them out. They do a lot of stuff on the 14 to 18 Silverado, some really extensive modifications they've done. But Cliff over there is the first one that I saw that ever did it this way, and I'm going to show you everything that he had in his video, and I'll show you the way I'm doing it. A couple of different changes. I used to upfit emergency vehicles back when I was still working in public safety, so there are a few things that I would do a little bit differently compared to how he did it. Not faulting him at all, it's just my preference, and there's 101 ways to skin this particular cat. So we're going to go ahead and get the camera turned around. I'll show you what we're working with here, and go ahead and jump into it. So stay tuned. And we're done. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate it. No, I'm just kidding. All right, this is what all of the lights look like when they're turned on. No, nothing has been wired in yet. I've just got them mocked up for you. I have all the lights mounted, and I've got all of this rat's nest of relay harnesses sitting here next to the truck, and I will show you exactly what I'm going to be doing with this and how I plan on wiring all of this up. But I just wanted to show you what all of these things look like while they're actually turned on and installed in the vehicle. I think this looks really good. You can probably hear that humming coming from the background. I am running aftermarket last fit 6000K LEDs for my headlights, so those have fans mounted to the back of each enclosure right here. On the inside there is actually you have a fan mounted to the LED, and then a custom cap that comes with those bulbs. I've been running these for just about a year now, and they are fantastic. Very, very bright. The color temperature is much more of a bright white compared to that yellowish hue that the stock HIDs have. And the best part about the LED bulbs, that you don't get that projector bounce effect that you get with the HIDs sometimes. You're going over a bumpy road and you kind of see the headlight doing that. You see that on semis a lot, where it just kind of oscillates and bounces. That's a problem with the actual HID bulbs themselves, not the actual projectors. So by going to those LED bulbs, it solves that issue. It's a solid, constant, steady beam of light. So that's really nice. But as you can see, we got our 4 cube lights where the factory fog lights would be, and then our 20-inch light bar in the center of the bumper. So this is extremely bright. But let me shut everything down here, and I'll show you exactly how I've got this set up so far. And then we'll get the wiring wrapped up. I'll show you how I'm going to go about doing all that. Okay guys, I guess we'll start by actually having a look at how all these lights mount in the bumper. This is all rough country stuff. This all came with the bumper for 899 bucks. You get the steel bumper, all the mounting hardware that you need, plus you get 4 of these cube lights that will replace your factory fogs. The old bumper is sitting over there. And then you get your 20-inch light bar that mounts in the center of this. I gotta tell you, getting these lights mounted to the bumper was more difficult than mounting the bumper to the truck, if you can believe that. It's just, there's very little access and very little space. There's gussets and braces and stuff behind these welds that kind of block your access to it. The side lights weren't terrible. Those weren't so bad. But the center light bar is a gigantic pain in the butt. Let me climb underneath here and show you what I'm talking about. Anyway, this is how the light bar attaches. You have your mounting hardware that bolts in from the side over here. I don't know if you can see the fastener there, right here. I think there's a 13 or 14 millimeter metric. And then you have a super long bolt that sticks down here. The problem being that bolt is so long that it basically butts up to the bottom of the angle here. The biggest challenge is that the fact that you have a flat washer and a lock washer and then a nut that has to go on there. and it's just kind of a pain trying to hold this bolt up high enough to feed all those things on and then get the nuts started without everything falling onto your chest or onto your stomach, which happened to me multiple times. So I was kind of cussing at this thing a little bit when I got done here. But, you know, all told, it's not that bad. The adjustments are pretty easy as far as getting it leveling out the light bar, because all you do is come in here and loosen these side posts a little bit with your wrench, and then you can tilt this and then tighten them back down. I did put blue Loctite on everything here, even though it comes with these little split washers, lock washers. I don't like relying on those, especially out here, because everything just shakes and shimmies and vibrates so much on our roads. So I did go a step further and put a little extra Loctite on there. These side cubes actually mount from the top. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's actually slits cut in the top of the plate above where this honeycomb stuff is. I don't know if you can kind of see them through there. The hardware actually goes up through the bracket, because it has a little feature on there that holds the bolt for you and keeps it from spinning. And then you just tighten up your stuff from the top there, and then there's two little larger cutouts in the top here for your wires to pass through, because these have Deutsch connectors on them, which are really, really nice. I love Deutsch connectors because they're waterproof and they're very reliable. Turn the flash on here, that might be a little more helpful. There we go. So you got your Deutsch connectors here on your small LED cubes, and you got, you know, obviously two connections there and two connections here for the other side. And then for your light bar, you have a larger 2-pin round style connector that threads together. I like these because they're watertight. The problem with them is that everything is made out of plastic here, and the thread pitch on these components, the male and the female, is extremely fine. So if you ding or damage this at all before you get this thing screwed on, you're gonna have a bear of a time trying to get this female side to thread onto the male half. It's very easy to cross thread these, and if you do that, good luck. I mean, you'll never get a good seal. So be really careful with this style of connection. I much prefer the Deutsch style connectors over these, but this is what they have. It came with the kit. And all in all, that's a pretty well thought out kit. I am going to be securing all this stuff, you know, with zip ties and whatever. I'm not worrying about it right now. The nice thing is, they've already pre-wrapped all of this for you, so you really don't need to run any wire loom or anything like that. You can just secure these up out of the way, and they're already, they have this nylon sheeting over all the wires to protect them. So that's kind of nice. You don't need to worry about having wire loom or anything other than that. Another cool thing that they do is that they include these 2-to-1 Deutsch connectors, so you can take two of your plugs over here and convert it down into one and save yourself some wiring. The problem with that is that they didn't think all that far ahead with it, and instead of giving you a single Deutsch connector relay harness, your relay harness has two freaking plugs on it, so you can't really use the 2-to-1s there unless you want to whip up your own wiring harness. So you're going to have a couple more extra leads that you're going to have to chase and get secured and everything, but other than that, it's not terrible. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with the whole setup here. It is a little bit of a pain to mount the lights, like I said. I thought for a second that maybe the shorter bolts that go in the side here would go in the bottom, and that's why I was having such a challenge with it, but the longer bolts here are way too long to go in the holes in the side here. The holes in the side of the light bar are not deep enough to accommodate those longer fasteners. So I know a couple of you are probably saying that I installed it backwards, but I didn't. I tried that, believe me. So it's just something you're going to have to fight with a little bit, or just get out your angle grinder with a slicer disc and shorten those screws. But whatever, it's not a terrible thing. It's just a little nitpick of mine. And right here, this is the factory OEM harness connector that I was talking about. This is your grounds and your power for your factory fog lights. The male side of this connector is actually still attached to the bumper over there. You can actually see it sticking up right there in the middle. That's the other side of the plug that we need. So rather than cutting this off and running my leads directly, I think I'm going to cut that male side of the plug off of the factory bumper, plug it in here, and then run my leads out. And the reason that I'm doing that is because rather than using the enclosed switches that come on the relay harness, again, I'm going to convert the switch that comes on those and just hardwire it into the factory connector. That way when you hit your fog light switch, it activates all 4 of these cube lights at the corners. So that's how those will be controlled. So that's the reason I want to kind of harvest that other side of the plug off of there. So anyway, enough jaw-jacking for me underneath the truck. Let's move back around to the top and continue here. All right, so we're standing back outside the truck here. Now, I have routed all of my wires kind of along the bottom of the bumper here, and I've come up behind the driver's side headlight and gone down next to the radiator here, and I've come up right here. Now, this is not the final location for any of this. It's just laying here for demonstration purposes. One thing that Cliff at the Sunday Drive shows in his video when he was initially wiring his light bar and his relay harnesses is that he ran everything over to there because that's where your battery is, okay? Knowing what I know about upfitting vehicles, if you have a battery over on this side, there is 99.9% of the time always going to be a main wire that comes over here and feeds your fuse panel. Whatever side of the vehicle the fuse panel is on, that has to get power from somewhere. That is the guts and the heart of the truck here. And usually the fuse panel is on the driver's side because that's where all your electronics are, in the United States anyway, for a left-hand drive vehicle. So rather than running all the relay harnesses over there and having everything just kind of drilled into the firewall and all these wires and crap going everywhere to the battery, if you come over here, this is your main fuse block for the truck, okay? If you look right behind here, and you can see where I've got all those red leads just laying there, that's how I was testing everything for you guys earlier. Right here is a cap, all right? If you squeeze the little connectors on the side of this and pull this off, right below there, this guy, where that stud is, that is the main wire that goes from the battery. All right, so you got 12 volt in right there. And you already got on your relay harness from Rough Country, you've already got ring terminals that are heat shrinked on there. So you can either unbolt this or find another bolt that'll fit on that same stud. I'm not sure what the thread pitch is. And you can bolt all your positives right there. And you got a ground that you can bolt to right there. So you can have all your relays and everything tucked up underneath by your firewall right here. And what I'm going to do is take all the excess that I'm not going to need to get from there to there. I'm going to coil it up, zip tie it together. I'm going to run all of it back through these perforations in the inner part of the quarter panel. And I'm going to have everything tucked back in here out of the way. So all of my extra wire is going to be out of sight back behind the quarter panel in here, zip tied together and secured. And then just enough wire for my relays and everything to come to the positive terminal, and then to go to the ground terminal back over here, which I think I'm just gonna take one of these quarter panel bolts out and use that as my ground. There's actually an actual body ground right there. These wires here, that guy that's coming up, that actually goes to a stud back there behind the quarter panel, but it's kind of tucked way back next to the firewall underneath the hood hinge, so I'm not gonna bother using that. I'll just probably pull one of these bolts and just use that. So that's how I'm gonna get power and ground for all of my relays. Now, these I don't care for, all right? I'm not thrilled about these hokey little push button switches that they have. Is when they're off, you always have a red light on. I don't like that. I think that just looks, well, they're cheap, and they're cheap for a reason. I don't think they expect anybody to actually use these. But what I'm gonna do, like I said, is bypass all of that. So I'm gonna run some wires. All right, guys, got a little bit interrupted there. It's after lunch now. I had to go and take care of some stuff, so I don't remember exactly where I left off. So if this seems kind of like a weird splice, I apologize, but let me kind of back up a little bit. So we have all of our wiring here, all three of our relay harnesses. There's a relay harness for each set of lights, basically. So we got a harness for the left side, a harness for the right side, and a harness for the light bar. That's the three groups of wires that we have here. Each has their own individual relay, which is perfect because how we're going to have this set up, I mentioned earlier that I want to wire these cube lights into the factory fog light switch. So how I'm going to do that, and I think I might have gotten into this a little bit earlier, but how I'm going to do that is that I'm going to take the male side of the connector off of the old bumper that we're not using anymore that goes to the factory fog lights. We're going to cut that off and turn it into a pigtail. We're going to plug it in down under there to the other connector that I showed you earlier, hanging down below the truck in the middle of the bumper. We're going to plug our pigtail in, and we're going to run a ground lead and a couple of power leads, and we're going to make that basically our trigger wires for the relays that control the fog lights. That way, by using that factory connector, all you got to do is hit the button on the inside. That's going to activate your relays, which will then power up your cube lights down there in the corner. So that's the cleanest, easiest way that I can figure out how to go about doing that. Now, for the high beam control of the light bar, that's going to be a little bit more complicated, and I'm not very good at explaining that kind of stuff. Really, there's a really good wiring diagram that Cliff from the Sunday Drive put out during his whole install. So I'm gonna link that video down in the description below. Basically, the high beam control circuit is right down in here inside our main fuse panel, which I'll show you here in a second when we get to that point. You're going to need a 3-way fuse tap, an extra fuse, and we're going to have to run a wire, a couple of wires actually, from the inside of the vehicle to a 3-way switch that I'll show you here in a second. We're going to run the wires through this grommet if I can find a way to get to it. I know that's kind of tough to get to, but I have a really long industrial size fish tape there that I'm going to use to try to get the wires where they need to be. And these are the switches that I'm going to use. I'm just going to use one of them, but it was cheaper to buy a pack of like, what, 20? That's just how Amazon works. You buy stuff in bulk. But it's just a very simple round on, off, on 3-way switch. So that will go right inside here in the driver's side. Now I have the Z71 package with the tow package, so I have the integrated trailer brake controller here, so I cannot put it in the same place that Cliff put it in his video. He doesn't have this. He has that little storage tray that's right there, because if you don't have that, that's just an empty pocket. So what I'm going to do is drill a hole and mount that switch just below our main controls here. If I remember correctly, there should not be anything right here. It's concealed, it's at a downward angle, it's out of the way. So what I'm going to do is just leave it in high beam control mode most of the time, unless I'm the one driving the truck. That way, when my wife turns the high beams on, she's automatically going to get that light bar. She's never even going to have to think about it. And another thing I'm going to do, I already have the module, and I forget who I got them from. I'm going to have to link that in the description as well, but I got what's called the 4-high mod. Basically, it is just a little resistor and a couple of connectors that you can use to basically jump a wire in your body control module, so that whenever you turn your high beams on, it also activates your fog lights. So by installing that, as well as this switch that allows the high beams to control the light bar, when my wife turns the high beams on in this truck, she's going to get all of the forward light, everything. High beam headlights, the light bar, and the cube lights are all going to be turned on at the same time, and she's not going to have to mess with any switches or screw with anything or take her eyes off the road. It's going to be perfect. So that's the route I'm going to go. Like I said, I'm not sure how much I'm going to get done today. She's got to actually use this truck today, so I'm trying to get at least the main part of the wiring wrapped up and tied in. So I'm going to just jump on this real quick. I'll bring you back as soon as I get some progress made, and I'll kind of show you where we're at. And then when we start getting into the actual wiring of the switch and everything, I'll try to film some of that so you guys have some idea of what I'm talking about. But anyway, I got to get cracking here. I'll bring you back shortly. All right, guys. Originally, my plan was I was going to go through this existing grommet right here, and I got my fish tape out, and I actually had Everett come up again and help. Hi, Everett.
Hi.
Hi. And we tried to stick the fish tape down there, and I was playing contortionist trying to get underneath the dash there, and there was just so much padding and plastic and layers of sound deadening material in between the front of the firewall and the back of the dash that I couldn't even see the fish tape. There's just no access to it. So what I'm going to do, I have gone over here into the side of the door, and just behind your main door harness here, there is a grommet, which has been removed already. I've pulled this grommet out. It is there for upfitting. It is there for you to run wires through it. So I'm going to use this grommet. I'm going to punch a hole in the middle of it, and then I'm going to run my 3 wires for my switch, which will control the light bar functions. So essentially what I've done, you pull your side panel off here for your fuse, and then for your controls right here, that just pops off. It just kind of pulls away. There's just these little push clips on the top and the bottom there. Just pull it from the side and it'll pop right off. Then just disconnect your 3 controls for all your switches and everything. What I'm going to do is take one of my switches and drill a hole right here directly below the headlight control. And that will be, hey Everett, will you hand me one of those switches, please? I'm gonna drill a hole for that, and it's gonna get mounted right here. So it'll be kind of low profile and out of the way when you're actually driving down the road. Mrs. Mechanic's not even gonna have to touch it. Basically, in the down position, that's gonna be manual control of the light bar. That will turn the light bar on by itself. In the middle position, the light bar is disconnected essentially. It's just bypassed. In the up position, it's going to be controlled by the high beams. So when you flick your high beam stalk on, it's going to activate power going from the fuse block, send that power up to the switch will route it back down to the relay and kick that light bar on. To go one step further, with the 4-high mod installed and the modifications made to the body control module, essentially when you have that switch in the up position, all my wife is going to have to do is flick the high beams on, and everything is going to come on at the front of the truck. She's going to get the cube lights, the light bar, the low beam and high beam LEDs, and everything is going to be lit up front for her. So I think that's going to be a really slick setup when it's finished. So what I need to do is poke a hole in this grommet, get my wires and everything hooked up to my switch, and fish those through to the front, and then we'll go about tying up the rest of the wiring and everything. So let me do that real quick and I'll bring you back shortly. All right, so here's the basic process. We got our grommet here, we've got a couple lengths of wire. I'm using red and black because that's what I have. Ideally it would be, you know, red and white or something like that, but essentially for this switch, we're going to have a constant 12 volt source, we're going to have the trigger wire that goes out to the relay, and then we're going to have this wire connected to our high beam fuse in the fuse block, which I'll show you here after I get all this wrapped up. But I'm going to use one of my favorite wiring tools right now, which is the Klein Catapult. This thing is fantastic. It grabs and strips the wire for you all in one motion. These are only about, I think, 25 bucks. You can get them at Home Depot and Lowe's and whatnot. But they are pretty slick. Ta-da. Nice clean cuts on your wire. Now I have these spade terminals here. These are not the weather tight ones that I usually use. I'm out of those that are the heat shrink, basically the heat shrink ones. So I am going to just throw a little bit of heat shrink tubing on the wires as I do this. I'm not too concerned about these because these particular wires are the ones that are going to be in the cab right behind the dash. So if we're getting liquid up here, then that's a whole different set of issues. But just, you know, because I'm kind of anal about that kind of stuff and I like doing stuff the right way, that's what we're going to do. So we're just going to crimp these guys on one at a time. Okay. Now we're just going to heat shrink our tubing on there to seal everything up, and we'll be good to go as far as that goes, and we can start running wires through the grommet and then back up to the engine bay where we will get everything put together the way we want. All right, more in just a second. All right, guys, got another step done here. We have our switch mounted with the wires connected. What I had to do here, I thought that I measured this well enough, but apparently I didn't, but you know, that's okay. I ended up having to relieve a little bit of the plastic, this part. I just cut a square notch out of that because with the way the switch was mounted, there was clearance for the switch, but what I didn't account for was those really fat wire connectors that I had to use. The connectors were getting pressed into the flat part of the panel and actually causing the switch to push out. So what I did, I don't want to risk yanking those things out, but what I ended up doing here, you can see that, I just ended up taking a razor blade and just relieving a little bit of that plastic out of there, which is fine. I mean, there's cuts and holes in this thing all over the place for the factory connectors, so it doesn't look too out of place. Just that's something to keep in mind if you're picking your switch placement. I measured for the switch, I didn't measure for the connectors, so that was stupid on my part, but you know, no one's ever going to see that and it doesn't look terrible. I'll go back in with a Dremel tool and clean that up after the fact, but for right now it's fine. What I did do is I took some cloth wire loom tape and I wrapped up the wires that are going to be passing through the side of that grommet. Get that put back in. And I've got that all wrapped up, so that looks pretty factory. I've got actual cloth wire loom tape there, and I have it attached with a zip tie to the factory harness. It goes down through here, back around, and it comes out the door grommet right here. So what I'm going to do once I get all the wiring set and done is I will take some clear silicone and I will seal that just to make sure that we don't have any water seeping down past there. That's the last thing that we want in the cab because it'll just go directly down the side of the body lines there and end up on the floor and get the carpet wet. So we don't want that. Probably unnecessary. I made a very small hole and forced the wires through it, but still, even so, I'd rather be safe than sorry. So what we've got here are the remainder of our wires that we need to fish up to the front. Like I said earlier, all I have was red and black. Ideally, I would like to have a white wire in here instead of black, but anyway, solid red wire, that's gonna be our full-time 12-volt battery connection. So when we're running the light bar without the high beam control, that's what's going to provide power for the relay. The red wire with the black dashes on it, that's going to be going into our fuse panel, and that is going to control the high beam circuit. So that's going to get tied into our three-way fuse tap is going to get this wire attached to it, and that's going to allow the light bar to be controlled via the headlight stalk. The black wire, that's our signal wire that's going to go into the relay and tell the relay to command the light to turn on. So essentially, in the up position, that's going to be connecting these two wires, the red with the black dashes and the black wire. That will allow the relay to take power from the high beam circuit and shunt it out to the light bar. In the center position, the switch is off. The light bar won't come on, but you'll still retain function of everything else. So your high beams and everything will work, just the light bar won't come on. In the down position, that is going to link the solid red wire and the relay trigger wire, and that will turn the light bar on anytime. The key doesn't have to be on, the high beams don't have to be on. It's just a direct to battery connection that will allow the relay to power up the light bar. So that's how that works. So now we're gonna fish these up into the engine bay, and we're going to get the rest of our wiring done. All right, everybody, it's the next day again. Let me show you what progress I've made here. I did a little bit off camera toward the end of the day last night. I was running out of daylight, and I just wanted to try to get as much wrapped up as I could. Gonna try to get the remainder of the wiring and everything done this afternoon. But where we're at right now is that we have fished the wires for the light bar through here, and I've attached it to the existing factory harness location. Then I fed it back into the quarter panel here on the inside, and then back out up here. That way I can run the wires and everything where they need to go. Now I've got multiple things going on here, so I apologize if it looks a little bit convoluted right now. This will all get cleaned up after the fact. Just as an aside, before I get too far into this, what I've done, I have taken each one of these relays and I have marked RF for right fogs, LF for left fogs, and the other relay for the light bar is marked CLB. That's for center light bar. I would have just put CB or something on there, but you know, if we ever sell this truck down the line, I don't want someone to see CB and think that there's like a CB radio or something attached somewhere and accidentally disconnect that. Anyway, I'm trying to idiot proof this as much as possible. But anyway, so we have our main wires for the light bar coming through right here. And what I have done, and this is going to get a little bit a little crazy, but you can see one of these wires. This is our red wire with the black dashes on it. This is our trigger wire for the high beam circuit, and I have taken this entire fuse block out and run it in through right here. And you can see more detail on this over at the Sunday Drive YouTube channel. Like I said, Cliff's video, this is how I got this whole idea, is from Cliff over at the Sunday Drive doing this. But if you take off your main fuse block here, which I'll do, you can see that I've actually found an area of the fuse panel here that does not have any circuits in it. There is one big PCB board underneath this whole thing that links all this stuff together. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking when you do this. And you need to make sure that you are not going to damage any components on your truck if you decide you're going to drill a hole here. I've drilled a hole for this wire right here, and I actually punctured the PCB board, but everything still works because there are no circuits hooked up to any of this down here. They use the same fuse panel for, you know, most of even the 3/4 ton and 1 ton trucks, you know, the Duramax powered vehicles, they all use this similar layout. The difference being how the inside of this is configured. A lot of these blank spaces are for glow plugs and things related to diesels that use multiple batteries and have different equipment, or trucks that are optioned differently than this one. So it's up to you. If you're going to drill a hole in anything in here, you need to verify that you are doing it safely and you're not going to disrupt any current flow to anything that needs it. So please do this at your own risk, but this is what I have done. I've drilled a hole right here next to these two hookups that have no taps, no fuses, no nothing down in here. This is all just blank, this whole area. I've drilled a hole, I've wire loom wrapped this single wire. It comes in right here and it comes up right here. And then what you have is a 3-way fuse tap. This right here, this is fuse number 58 if you look on the lid. This is this 3-position fuse. It's actually got 3 pins on it, kind of an oddball deal. But I've added this 3-way fuse tap, which you can find on Amazon. I'll see if I can link this for you guys, that way you can just order it directly. But the 10 amp fuse is the existing fuse that was in it, and then I have a 5 amp fuse on top to go out to the relay. Again, this is just a trigger wire. No major current or amperage is going to be flowing through this. This is just a control. So when you turn on your high beams, it's going to energize this wire, close the contacts inside that relay, and allow the light bar to turn on along with the high beams. This fuse is for your headlights, so that's why we've tapped into it. So by putting this back down in here, we have now tapped into this function, so we can trigger this wire whenever you turn the high beams on. So that's how that works. Again, I'll do my best to link all this stuff down in the description so you can order it for yourself. But in order to take this thing out, I mean, to get the lid off, you got to pull back on these little tabs, and then you can lift the lid off. And then to get the actual fuse block out, you lift these. There's little, let me see if I can find them. Where are they? There's down here on the sides here. I don't know if you can see those. Probably not. But there's these little tabs here. You have to kind of pull those out in order to lift these handles up. You pull them up toward you like this. And when you lift this up, I don't want to do it all the way. When you lift this up, it disconnects the main fuse panel from all the quick disconnect plugs underneath it. So you do this with both of these handles on both sides, and you lift the whole thing up and out, and you can disconnect this whole thing. But remember, you have your main battery connection hooked up back here, so you won't be able to move it very far unless you unhook this first. You don't really need to. All you're doing is lifting this out of the way so you can verify that you can run your wire and you can see what you're doing, run it through there, and then you just drill your hole wherever you think is a safe spot to drill your hole. And then when you're all done, you can put this back together. You can put your lid back on your fuse panel and it looks factory. You don't have any wires going in, nothing's getting pinched. It's a really clean install doing it this way. But again, I'm going to reiterate this for the umpteenth time. Be careful. You have to drill through the circuit board to get this wire in here this way. If you do it wrong, you're going to destroy this thing, okay? You're going to short something out and you're going to be in a big world of hurt. So this particular location on my truck, this whole area is dead. There are no circuits in any of these locations, so I wasn't worried about any cross flow or any circuitry getting damaged in there. But I did drill right through the PCB, so that was a little bit of a nerve-wracking scenario for me. So anyway, that's where we're at. So we've got that hooked up. Now the remainder of this, if I can find the rest of this harness, which is down here. Okay. This is the main hookup for the remainder of those leads for the center light bar. So again, I'm going to take advantage of those existing ring terminals when all is said and done here and hook it up to our main battery connection right here. But for now, that's at least how the trigger wire is installed. So I'm going to go ahead and close this back up. Now, as far as the fog lights go, I have taken the switches that come with this, these guys here. I have disconnected all of these hokey things and run the actual wire that this was attached to. After pulling everything back up behind the driver's side headlight, I have run the switch wires back down here and cut the ends of those plugs off. Those are right here. Again, labeled appropriately, RF and LF, so I know what I'm working with. Right here, this is the factory harness. This is the factory plug that went into the factory bumper that controls the fog lights. Okay, so you've got a power wire and 2 grounds. You don't need the grounds, okay? All we're looking at is the red power wire. This is the plug. This is the plug that I cut off of our factory bumper sitting over there. That's why I wanted to retain this, so I didn't have to cut the actual plug that was mounted to the truck. So in case anyone ever wants to take this front bumper off, if they replace it with a different factory bumper, they still have this plug here that they can use. I don't like cutting stuff that's going to remain on the truck. So anyway, we have this plug off of the old factory front bumper, and I cut it off right there at the split where it goes out to each fog light. And I found out that you don't need either of those grounds. All we do is connect the red wire to the blue trigger wire in our switch harnesses. The white and black wire in here are no longer needed. These were functions for the lights on the switch themselves. And since we're using the OEM fog light switch to control these, that's already controlled by the BCM as far as the lights and everything on the dash. So we don't need to worry about either of those. So what I'm gonna do is take some heat shrink and cover those up so they can't accidentally cross with anything. And then we're gonna tie both of these blue wires together, put it in a butt splice connector, and then connect that to the red wire over on this harness. So I know that sounds a little bit convoluted. Let me do all this off camera real quick since I don't have anyone to hold the camera for me. I'll bring you back when all of that is done and I'll show you the final product there. That way you have some idea of what I'm doing. So give me 1 second here. Okay guys, we're back under the truck here. I misspoke, I said red wire, but actually it's like a brown with a purple stripe. That's the wire that I've got that will trigger the fog lights. If I can get my phone to focus, probably not. There we go. So it's like brown with a violet stripe, I guess. I'm not really sure what color that would be. The wire is a little bit dirty because this rides under the truck. But anyway, I verified all these with a multimeter before I started cutting anything. But you need to do the same. You know, do your own due diligence on your particular vehicle, because you can have 2 identical trucks sitting right next to each other, same year, same options, same everything. And depending on what connectors and what manufacturer they had on the assembly line that day, one truck could be, you know, the pinout for one truck will be the same, but the wire colors could be completely different. So anyway, I have the 2 blue wires from what used to be the switches, came with the relay harness from Rough Country. I have those linked together, and those are going into that trigger wire, that brown with the violet stripe. And that will allow these cube lights to be turned on with the factory fog light switch. So I got a big piece of heat shrink tubing here. I'm just gonna slide that down, seal all this up, tape it. I'm gonna start cleaning up some of this wiring, getting everything pulled tight, zip tied up and everything, get that all cleaned up. And then we'll go ahead and attach our relays to the battery and a ground. And I'll bring you back when all that's done. And I'll kind of show you the final setup here, but we're getting real close, so stand by. All right, guys, got all the wiring buttoned up. Everything is zip tied together and run and kind of consolidated down there underneath the truck. There is a little bit of extra slop down here behind the headlight, kind of hanging down by the bumper. I'm gonna have to reorganize some stuff here. I don't like the way this ended up. I'm not gonna show you the mess here. Things didn't go quite as I had hoped about tucking all the relays back in behind the quarter panel. It's just too complex with everything coming in from all different directions. So I'm gonna revise this eventually and do something else. Right now it's just sitting here, but I don't like it this way. I'm gonna have to figure it out later. I just want to get the truck drivable for my wife right now. But I got the grounds wired back here to this quarter panel mount, but one of them's pulled really tight because I don't have enough slack right here. I've got these run through the factory loom area, kind of matching the factory wiring. But I'm gonna have to do something with some of the slack I have down here and pull it up. Problem is I got it zip tied right down here, so I'm gonna have to cut that zip tie. I don't know, I'll figure it out. Anyway, it's done, everything works. Now, I will say that in Cliff's video, he recommended adding a flyback diode to your relay that controls the light bar. I did that. I took a little flyback diode and I attached it the proper way, and I soldered it on to the legs of the relay. And as soon as I fired the truck back up and tried it again, everything stopped working. So I pulled it back apart. And I don't know if his wiring diagram's wrong. I know I did it correctly as far as me pointing the diode in the right direction. But that thing got so hot, it immediately blew the fuse and melted right through all the electrical tape that I had isolating it. So, yeah, I don't know about the flyback diode in this particular application. He was installing a 32-inch light bar. This one is only a 20, so it's pulling a lot less amperage. I think I'm going to let that one ride for right now and just run it with the relay by itself. I don't think we're going to have any back surge of current or anything. A flyback diode is just designed to keep current bleed off from going back into your main electronics when you turn off the light bar. And you only need that because we're tapping into the factory high beam circuit. So the concern is that some of that current, when you turn the high beams off, that sudden, it's kind of like a blow off valve on a turbo. That sudden stop when the throttle plate closes, if you don't have some place to go, i.e. the blow off valve, you're just going to blow your intake apart because you have all that boost and there's no place for it to go and the turbo is still spinning. Kind of a similar situation with the flyback diode. It's just allowing the current to dissipate without backfeeding into your main electronics. But right now it works fine, so whatever. One other thing that I did do, I got this from Boost Auto. This is basically the 4-high mod. I don't know if you can see that down there. Oh, sorry. That's just this little relay clips into your body control module here and links a couple of these wires, and you can go to their website and look it up for yourself. These are only about 20 bucks, and this allows you to have everything on at the same time. So when you turn your high beams on, your fog lights come on too. So basically what this means is that when my wife flips the high beams on and we're in the mode where the light bar is controlled by the high beams as well, she'll get everything. So let me turn the key on here. Okay, so here's our switch. I'm just gonna go into the down position first. There's our light bar. That's controlled independently, okay? So then next, fog lights. You hit the fog light switch on the dash, you get your fog lights. There we go. And then when we turn the headlights on, turn our fog lights on, that still works. Then we flip our switch into the up position. So that means our light bar should be controlled by the high beam switch. And because we also have that 4-high mod installed from Boost, when you turn the high beams on, everything will illuminate. Bang. So we got everything on now. And that is an awful lot of light for the front of this truck. Pretty happy with the way this has turned out. I will definitely, I'll pause the video here and then we will go and get some night shots later this evening. But for right now, with the exception of redoing some of that relay wiring, everything is done and everything works, and it works beautifully. Lots of light, lots and lots of light. I know it looks probably kind of a greenish blue hue on the camera, but that's just because of the camera. In person, this is bright white. There's very little difference between the cube lights, the light bar, and the headlights. The color is not quite the same, but it's very close. Maybe 1,000K off. I think the headlights are 5,000K and the cubes are 6,000K, but you really can't tell the difference when you're standing right in front of it and it's blinding you. So I am really happy with all this. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for now. We got everything cleaned up, tied up, and wrapped up. So next thing you see is going to be some night shots. Stay tuned. All right, everybody, we are out here. I've got the dash lights dimmed as much as I possibly can, but as you can plainly see by me looking out the window, we are in pitch darkness. That's how it is out here all the time. We are in the middle of nowhere. We are miles and miles and miles away from civilization. Street lights don't exist. So that's the reason for all of this. Now you might see a little tiny light come on in the background. Those are our pivot tower lights. They come on when the pivot moves, just so at night you're aware that the system's in motion so no one goes out there and gets hurt. But anyway, that's the only lights to be seen for miles around. So anyway, basically I got everything shut down right now. We'll go ahead and turn the parking lights on. That's that little blurb is our parking lights. And here's our regular low beam last fit LED headlight bulbs converted from our D5S HIDs that come with this truck. So there's low beam and there's high beam. No light bar, no nothing. Now I will tell you this, I am extremely impressed with the cube lights that came with this kit. They're very bright, they're well focused, they put out a lot of light. I am not impressed with the light bar, and I was afraid of this going into it, and let me explain why. These relatively inexpensively made light bars just scatter light everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Which you'd think would be good, but the problem is, when you have that light bar on along with the high beams and everything else, it creates a gigantic hot spot of light right here in front of you in the road. And it makes it impossible for your eyes to adjust to the darkness and actually allow you to focus on the light that it's putting out further down the road. So your focus remains right here in the center of the road, right in front of you. It has to, because it's so blindingly bright. So I might end up ripping this light bar out and getting rid of it and trying to find some spotlight type LED light bars. I have to look around and see if I can maybe find something. But anyway, let me go ahead and turn the high beams back off here. Then we're going to turn on the fog lights, or the cube lights, controlled by our factory fog light switch down here. So go ahead and turn these guys on. Boom. I've got them aimed so that the hot spots kind of just barely overlap and you get a nice wide beam of light. I had them angled almost all the way out and that was too far out. It just kind of made some useless hot spots off to the sides. But let me turn them off again so you can see the spillover. So leaning forward a little bit, you get a nice hot spot all the way around your periphery, going all the way around the truck, which is great out here because we have obviously deer, which is the whole reason we're sitting here right now, antelope, neighbors' cows, you name it. So anyway, we got the fog lights on now, turn the high beams back on. Really not a whole lot of, with the cube lights on, the high beams don't make a whole lot of difference. But now we'll go ahead and turn the light bar on, we'll get everything going together. Flip my switch here, bang. So there's the light bar, and like I said, your hot spot, even with that thing tilted back a little bit, just because of the way the reflectors are designed, you have this huge hot spot right here. And yeah, it does throw out a lot of light further down the road, but the problem is you almost want to go like this. You want to block that light right in front of you, that way you can actually see further down the road, because with that light there, you probably saw the camera adjust, it has to. It's freaking bright right here, no matter how you have this thing angled. So I apologize for the focus going crazy there, but with the lights off and, you know, I'm trying to use the light outside the truck to allow you to see what I'm doing. But there it is. We'll go for a quick drive here with everything on, and I'll kind of go bebopping down the road and just let you guys see what it looks like from my perspective. Now, it's not quite as bright as what it looks like on the camera, just because the human eye doesn't render light the same way that a camera lens does. So I can see a lot farther down the road looking through the viewfinder on the camera than I can in real life. That's just how those automatic adjustments work for these cameras. But as you can see, There is a crap ton of light coming out the front of this truck right now, guys. I'm overall pretty happy. I just don't like the fact that I have such an extreme hot spot right in the front of my bumper, essentially, right on the road right in front of me. And just for reference, I'll turn everything off again and we'll go back down to the low beams only. Pretty significant difference, especially in person. On camera, I can still see farther. But turn everything back on again. Bang. I mean, it's a wall of light that this thing puts out. I just wish that it was a little bit more focused and through light further down the road. Now, I knew what I was getting into with this light bar. It came with the bumper, so I can't complain too much. I mean, it's nice to have. I just wish that the focus was different. So again, that's something that I'll have to look into. Maybe get a different light bar to replace that one that has some larger LED reflectors that act more like spotlights rather than these floodlights. It'll throw some light further down the road. But anyway, I'm gonna call this project a success, guys. Everything works exactly how it should. All the relays are wired in, all the lights are wired in nice and tight, they're aimed properly. The switching works great. I mean, I can still turn the main light bar off with this switch in the cab just fine. Just like that. I got a car in front of me, someone's leaving, so I better turn all this crap off or I'm gonna blind them. So, anyway, you kind of have a basic idea of what I've got going on now with this whole thing, so I'm pretty happy with it overall. So I hope this was informative for you. I know it's a lot of work, and I know this video is probably going to end up being extremely long, so if you're still with me all the way at the end here, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Got to go over this cattle guard here. Oof. If you have any questions about the install or any of the procedures that I use to get this working the way it's working right now, go ahead and leave me a comment. I'll do my best to get back to you. YouTube's been doing that weird thing again lately where they automatically delete some comments. I don't know if they think they're spam or what, but if you leave a comment on one of my videos and it's not obscene or vulgar or rude or whatever, and there's an actual legitimate question and all of a sudden your comment disappears, comment again and let me know that you tried to ask me a question but YouTube took it down. They've been doing that a lot lately. I don't know why, but it's been bugging me. So I apologize if you guys have left me some comments and then it seems like I'm ignoring you. I'm not. Just the comments, I go to respond and it says this comment's no longer available. So, oh dear. Holy crap, did you guys see that? Good grief. That was almost another freaking accident with a new bumper. Didn't want to test that. But that's why we have these lights. I just made my own point. Anyway, guys, I'm going to shut up now. This video's gone on long enough, but thank you very much for watching. I am home now, coming through the main gates with our American flags. I'm going to go to bed. So you guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend, and we'll catch you on the next one. See ya.